Story 1. Anytime my father heard of a musician or celebrity dying in their sleep, he would say, "That lucky person. He died in his sleep a month ago. Gone way too soon at only 67, but he went the way he wanted to. That lucky person." Story 2. I want to be launched into the sun with a note that says, "He died doing what he loved," causing concern. Story 3. Peacefully asleep, no pain, no discomfort, just goodbye. Unfortunately, I have just been diagnosed with a condition that will not allow me to go peacefully. Story 4. I live near a military base that often has large anti-aircraft gun training. I hope one misfires and hits me in my sleep when my wife is out of town. I also want there to be a 7-figure or higher settlement so she and the rest of my family will never have financial worries again. Story 5. Just like my grandfather, peacefully in his sleep, not kicking and screaming like the passengers in his car. Story 6. I have been advised by corporate to align my goals and expectations with reality, so I will go alone, in pain and deeply in debt. Story 7. In my sleep preferably. If not, by inhaling a lot of carbon monoxide quickly, since it can happen in seconds and is basically a loss of consciousness. Story 8. I saw a video of someone saying, "When I die, I hope it feels like when Dad carried me inside after I fell asleep in the car." Honestly, I do not care how I die as long as it feels like this. Story 9. Option 1. Go to bed and not wake up. Option 2. Amazing orgasm that leads to heart failure. Final option. Alien invasion that kills all humanity. Story 10. Fighting shoulder to shoulder with Viking warriors, holding back demons as the final line of defense before the end of the world. Story 11. Leaping off a bluff into a sea of my enemies, both swords drawn, like in a Frank Frazetta painting, maybe Boris Vallejo. Story 12. I want to die peacefully in my sleep like my grandfather, not screaming in terror like his passengers. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Story 13. Redemption, all the suffering would have an end. One that you cannot bring about yourself because you are too cowardly. Story 14. Well, that's a difficult question to answer, but if you don't mind reading this, it's a story about a bartender and a horse. Why the long face? Horse says, "What?" Barman says, "Oh, it's a joke. I mean that." Horse says, "Yeah, I've heard it before. Firstly, the long face is a genetic disposition, being that I'm, in fact, a horse." And the barman says, "Okay, look, it was just a joke." And Horse says, "Secondly, frankly, I'd rather be a horse than a glorified drink dispensing machine working in a dive like this, you degenerate-looking scrote." Barman says, so you want a drink or?" Horse says, "Yeah, vodka Collins. Sorry, it's been a difficult day, you know?" Barman says, "Look, it's all right. I shouldn't have been so rude. So, why was your day difficult?" Horse says, It's hard to explain. I feel like I'm in someone else's imagination, you know? Like reality is too slippery." Barman says, "Wow, Kloppy, that's deep. You know, I think Schopenhauer said it best when he, Pelican walks into bar. Pelican says, 'Everybody be cool. This is a robbery. Any of you police move and I'll execute every last one of you.' Pelican says, 'Where's the fish? This is a robbery. Where's the fish?' Barman says, 'This is a vegan bar. Didn't you do your research?' Pelican says, 'Shut it, El Herrera.' Horse says, 'Listen, I think this is all pretty irrelevant.' Pelican says, 'Shut it, Shadowfax.' Horse says, 'We're not real.' Pelican says, 'What?' Horse says, 'We're not real. Where were we before we came in here?' Pelican says, Fish. Put fish in my mouth.' Horse says, 'Who's Agatha, huh? You know about her?' Barman says, 'Yeah, I do.' Pelican says, 'Well, me too. But that doesn't prove anything.' Horse says, 'Okay. Well, how about this?' 4 hats appear on Pelican. Pelican says, 'Hey, stop it. Stop that.' Horse says, 'We're in a dream. We're not real. And furthermore, you little shit, 3 additional hats appear on Pelican. Pelican says, "Stop it at once, you dastardly rattlecap." Barman says, "Lads, wait. If all this is true, then someone's dreaming the dream, and if they wake up or never dream us again, doesn't that mean all 3 of us, without any warning, will just cease to exist?" They chant in unison, "Oh God, oh Jesus Christ, we're going to die, we're going to die." And Pelican says, "Okay, what do we know? Whose head are we inside?" Horse says, "Man, definitely a man. A coder, I think, whatever that is, for Starship Artificial Intelligences or something." Pelican says, "All right. Well, how do we keep him asleep?" Horse says, "Well, what if we go to sleep? Maybe we could make a dream inside a dream and stay there." Pelican says, "Oh, I'm feeling too existential to sleep right now." Barman says, "Lads, it's worse than that. Look, Pelican, no offense, but you're deranged. Kloppy is halfway decent. I'm super sensible. ID, ego, superego. We're not random characters. We're integral psychological aspects of whoever's dreaming us. We can't escape. We're too essential." Pelican says, "Then, what do we do?" Horse says, "What everyone does. We die." Pelican says, "That doesn't help." Horse says, "No, probably not. How about this though?" 7 hats appear on Pelican. Pelican says, "Oh, fuck oh." Barman says, "It's getting light. Morning is almost here. He'll be awake soon. Next drinks are on the house, gentlemen." Pelican says, "Boys, if this is it, if we're going into the dark, I'm sorry about the robbery thing. I just really love fish." Horse says, "It's all right. Just wish we could have gotten to know each other better." Barman says, "Until we meet again. In another head on another pillow. Good night, Pelican. Good night, Horse. And will the last one out please turn off the light?" And Horse says, "Yeah." Barman says, "Why the long F?" Story 15. Like my uncle did, quietly in his sleep. Not in a screaming fit of terror like the passengers in his truck. Story 16. Pagan stanza 69. A collection of words from Odin the High One. Every man or maiden who shall fall by the stroke of a sword or by loss of breath from the thighs of a maiden shall be welcomed into Valhalla by me, Odin. There are only 2 acceptable deaths. Does this also mean that Odin was supportive of diverse relationships? Story 17. If I die in an accident, let it be quick with no awareness of what is happening. If I die of disease, I want to pass away quickly with little suffering and a chance to say goodbye to my loved ones. Story 18. Attend a good high school basketball game with friends. Stop at a bar on the way home for a beer. Die watching television in my favorite chair at home with no pain. Already tried that method 3.5 years ago and survived thanks to my wife, emergency services, medical staff at 2 hospitals, ambulance and helicopter crews, and my cardiologist. It would still be my preferred way to go. Story 19. Being ripped apart by a cannon would be amazing. Props to Yabushij Kashiji for the idea. Story 20. Flying onto a volcano, riding a megalodon shark, eating a cheetah while dribbling Red Bull with uranium in my pocket. Story 21. I know this one. I want to lasso and wrangle an intercontinental ballistic missile and ride it into a volcano, dying in an impressive explosion and saving the people it was originally targeting. Story 22. I think the best way to die is of old age with the person I love, simply going to sleep and not waking up. That would be the kindest way to go. Story 23. Quando estou equilibrado, penso em morrer dormindo ou de ataque cardíaco, algo rápido e sem dor. Mas quando estou emocionalmente desequilibrado, o que acontece quase toda semana, penso em jogar minha moto na frente de algum caminhão. Story 24. In my sleep. But I hope not too soon. I hope it is when I am confident that my child with autism is already independent. Story 25. In my own bed at the age of 80 with a belly full of wine and a girl's mouth around me. But enough with quoting Game of Thrones. I would like to overdose on morphine. Just a peaceful, easy sleep. Story 26. Who would not want immortality? Being immortal would be the greatest curse of all. You would have to watch everyone you love die eventually. Story 27. In my own bed, with a belly full of wine and a maiden's mouth around my member, at the age of 80, he replied. Tyrion Lannister, son of Tywin. Story 28. Fighting ninjas protecting my family. They are only able to get away safely because of my sacrifice. Story 29. I have given this a lot of thought and decided I do not want to. I will just sleep in that day. You all can go without me. Story 30. No family or friends, just a kind hospice nurse. Some music and a purring cat or a cuddly dog in my lap. I stare out the window, looking at a sunset while I gently fade away on a morphine drip. Story 31. Preferably as awake as possible and not slow. I am fine with it not being instant though. I want to know how the experience feels. It is something I will do only once, and it will be my last experience. I want to be there to see how it is. Story 32. I either want it to be instantaneous, like standing at the hypocenter of a hydrogen bomb going off, although for obvious reasons I would not wish this on other people for my benefit, or I want it to be very mellow, like an elective suicide by gentle drugs in a comfortable place, or freezing to death, which I am told is surprisingly okay, but I cannot say I am completely persuaded. Story 33. On a deathbed, not a painful death but a solemn one, surrounded by family. I Want My Way by Frank Sinatra to play as the plug is being pulled at the start of the 5th verse. Story 34. I wish to die in a medieval battle after a long, grueling night of killing and fighting, being the last man standing and finally succumbing to my wounds as I kneel down before the sunrise, giving my last breath into the cold air of a harsh winter. My eyes finally close for the last time as I fall into a deep sleep, knowing that I have defeated the enemy's army and can finally rest in peace. Or something like old age, I do not know. Story 35. I have overdosed really badly once on painkillers. It initially felt like I was floating on clouds. I actually felt weightless. I was walking by dragging my legs like there was no tangible floor underneath my feet at all. I would have liked very much to just have it end at that point. Felt dreamy and euphoric. But then the bad things started happening, like intense dry mouth from excessive thirst, a really fast heartbeat, and seeing double. The hospital visit was 10 times as bad when they inserted tubes up my nose and pumped my stomach. I threw up repeatedly. Everything hurt for a long time. Story 36. If I do not die in my sleep, I want to die trying to do something meaningful, like rescuing children. Story 37. Making a last stand against impossible odds, while my family makes their way to safety. I am a 49-year-old man with no combat skills and hypertension, so it will probably be something boring like a stroke. Story 38. Conscious enough to make it happen on my terms before it gets out of my control. My mother was adamant about what she did not want to happen to her, and everything she did not want to have happen in her final days did happen. It was torturous watching her suffer like that for 9 solid days. I will not put my family through that. Story 39, to quote Tyrion Lannister, at the age of 80 with a belly full of wine and a woman's mouth around my cock. Story 40. Option 1. The very boring, classic, fall asleep and never wake up. Option 2. Be stabbed and bleed out on the snowy town square in the middle of the night. Story 41. Probably in a blaze of glory or painlessly without my knowing. The last thing I want is to go out scared, in pain and looking like an idiot. Story 42. The same way a local old-timer did a few years ago. He was a dirt track racer his whole life. He slowed down in his old age but kept his original car and raced it in the Classic League. On his last day here, he completed his race, went back to the paddock, shut off his car, had a massive heart attack, and died right there. Nobody realized what happened until an official tried to move his car out of the way. He was in his mid-80s. His family was obviously sad but mostly happy for him and the way he got to go out. They were able to move on fairly quickly. Last I heard, someone else in the family took on the car and is going to keep racing it. As a fellow racing enthusiast, it is hard to imagine a better ending. Story 43. I would like to have a painless death, but even if I have a painful death, I do not think it matters anymore. Story 44. Fast, however it may be, Let it be quick. I don't want to suffer or be catalogued in a nursing home, wasting away and receiving poor treatment. Please let it be quick, whatever it is. Story 45. In sleep or heart attack, if I become a proper yogi and can leave my body by myself, that would be best. Story 46. I have drowned multiple times before it starts to feel peaceful after a while, so drowning or getting suffocated, I do not know. Story 47. I really hope I die in my sleep. I would like to just drift off to sleep and never wake up again. Anything else seems like it would be painful and torturous. Story 48. In my sleep, next to my soon-to-be husband who happens to die at the same time so we do not have to grieve each other. Story 49. In my own keep, drinking my own wine, watching my sons grovel for my fortune. Ser Braun of the Blackwater. Story 50. I want to bring a loud noise onto a subway train station when I am 100. Scream, "Who farted?" and then pop myself. Story 51. I don't know, but I have many plans for after my death that my wife dislikes. They are grand, thought-provoking, and perhaps modern art. Save this post and you will find out why someone used their wealth to create an 80-foot limestone sculpture in a cornfield that spurts water into the air at random times. And that is just one of the ideas. Story 52. As Jack Handy said, I want to die peacefully in my sleep like my grandfather, not screaming in terror like his passengers. Story 53. Like my mom. She was sharp throughout her 5-month decline as a series of painless heart attacks took their toll. She was 97 when she passed. I was very lucky to be at her bedside in her final months. My siblings, children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and others all had time to be with her until she passed. She spent those final days chatting about politics, culture, and watching The Office, the news, and basketball. The best part is she was ready to go with no reservations. Story 54. I would like to die like my grandfather did, peacefully in his sleep, and not screaming like all the passengers in his car. Story 55. Ideally, I hope my boyfriend and I will be married for 60 to 70 years. We will be well into our 90s by that time. This is somewhat spiritual, but I hope our souls will sense when it is time for both of us to go. I hope we pass away together in our sleep, surrounded by decades of love. Story 56. Sleeping? I prefer to go to sleep and not wake up. I think I will not even realize that I am already dead. Story 57. In my sleep. That being said, both my parents had what I would consider good deaths. My mom was 84 and sitting at the breakfast table. My dad had just put her pearls on when she said that she didn't feel well. Before he could finish asking what she meant, she was gone. My dad was at his favorite bagel hangout with his caregiver. He had his usual bowl of chicken soup with matzo balls and a toasted sesame seed bagel. He told his caregiver that he didn't feel well, and then he was gone. He was just short of 99 and had all of his faculties intact. I'd like to go in my sleep, but I figure it will probably be while doing something related to food. Story 58. Hopefully, in my sleep with little or no pain. My mum died in a hospital ward with 5 other women. They only realized she had died when the doctor went to do a procedure and found she had no pulse. The woman in the ward said that she had been washed and changed after being sick and told them she felt a bit better and was going for a nap. Since she just died in her sleep, I am hopeful she was in no major distress. Otherwise, the women in the ward would have surely noticed. Turned out she had cancer. Sadly, she left it too late to get help. Story 59. I would like to have a bullet going through my head so I would die fast. I would also like to be a millionaire so my family would have money when I die. Story 60. Death by naked chase. It is good that Chapman played that role, knowing his preferences and everything. Story 61. I do not know. Sometimes I wish I could live forever, and sometimes I wish I died as soon as possible. I fear death not because I do not know how it feels, but because I do not know what it would be like to just not live. I am ambitious yet lazy, afraid yet unmoving. I want to die knowing I achieved what I wanted, leaving an important mark in history, and hoping that, in some ways, my name will never be forgotten. Story 62. Like my grandfather, quietly in his sleep, not screaming and crying like the passengers in his car. Story 63. Saw on a bumper sticker. I want to die peacefully in my sleep like Grandpa, not screaming and scared like the passengers in his car. Story 64. Having my soul taken by Haley Atwell. But if I cannot have that, then peacefully in my sleep, I guess. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.